T.I. breaks silence, and it is going wild at this point. It all started with whispers that sounded too wild to be true. But the deeper you look, the more it feels like a family drama that belongs on the big screen. The Harris family, once praised as Atlanta's royal dynasty of rap, was suddenly at the center of conversations that no one expected. People weren't just gossiping about King Harris, T.I.'s son. They were questioning the very foundation of his identity. And in hip-hop, where bloodlines, legacy, and loyalty mean everything, that kind of talk can turn deadly fast. The spark came from something as ordinary as paperwork. According to the rumors, King's name surfaced in a ledger tied to contraband inside the prison system. On its own, that might have been brushed off. But the whispers didn't stop there. The same chatter claimed that King wasn't really T.I.'s biological son. Imagine that. One of Atlanta's most visible young stars, with cameras following his every move, now caught in speculation that could dismantle the empire his father built. For King, the weight of carrying the Harris name was already heavy. He grew up with the world watching him, balancing the expectations of being the son of a legend while fighting to prove himself as more than just T.I.'s kid. But when those rumors began spreading, it wasn't just about clout or music anymore. It was about whether he belonged at all. And here's where things got darker. Inside prison walls, where loyalty is tested every single day, a broken promise can cost you more than respect. It can cost you your life. Sources online claimed that the Harris name had become cursed inside the system, with debts and grudges attached to it. King's connection to that name made him a target, even if he wasn't the one directly involved. It painted a picture of a young man trapped between two worlds, the glamorous spotlight of fame and the brutal, unforgiving reality of street politics. But while the outside world debated whether any of this was true, King himself seemed to spiral deeper into conflict. Some videos showed him clashing with people online, others captured his frustration spilling over in public. And with every clip that surfaced, the question grew louder. Was this just the pressure of being young and famous, or was there something much more sinister happening behind the scenes? Because one thing was clear, the Harris family wasn't just fighting off rumors, they were fighting for their legacy. And what came next would leave fans stunned. As the speculation spread, it wasn't just faceless rumors anymore. Fans started pulling up old clips, old interviews, and even digging into family history to piece together their own theories. Suddenly, every side glance, every argument on reality TV, every slip of the tongue became evidence. The internet was building its own case, and King Harris was right in the middle of it. But here's the thing about the internet, it doesn't just question, it exaggerates. One theory turned into 10, and 10 became 100. Some claimed that King's attitude, his defiance, even his rebellious streak, was proof that he wasn't cut from the same cloth as T.I. Others suggested that King's frequent clashes with his father were signs of deeper secrets hidden behind closed doors. And while most of this had no solid proof, the narrative was too juicy for people to ignore. King, however, wasn't backing down. He fired back at critics, doubled down on being his own man, and tried to carry himself with the same confidence that made his father a household name. But here's the danger. The more he fought back, the more people saw it as confirmation that he was hiding something. It's a trap that many public figures fall into. Defend yourself too strongly, and suddenly the defense becomes the story. Behind the headlines, though, there was a darker layer. Online forums and so-called insiders claimed that the Harris family had long-standing enemies in Atlanta's underground circles. These weren't just critics on social media. These were people with real grudges, some of them stretching back decades. And if even a fraction of those stories were true, then King's struggles weren't just about his reputation, they were about survival. The idea of a cursed family name might sound like tabloid talk, but for King, it was starting to feel real. Every move he made, every slip-up, was amplified by people who either wanted to see him fail or wanted to use his name for their own gain. In that kind of environment, paranoia isn't just possible, it's expected. And when you're young, rich, and constantly under attack, paranoia often turns into reckless decisions. But here's the part that really fueled the fire: a mysterious document supposedly pointing to a paternity test. Some said it existed, others swore it was fake. No one could produce it, but the very suggestion was enough to turn whispers into full-blown drama. If that document was real, it wouldn't just embarrass King, it would shake the entire Harris dynasty to its core. And just when people thought the story couldn't get any messier, new footage surfaced that made everything 10 times worse. The footage that dropped was raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. It showed King Harris in the middle of a heated altercation, his voice raised, his body language tense, and every ounce of frustration spilling out for the world to see. What should have been a private moment of anger turned into viral content, dissected frame by millions online. In the clip, King snapped back at critics who doubted his place in the Harris family. He demanded respect, insisting that no one had the right to question his bloodline. For his supporters, it was a young man defending his name with passion. But for his haters, it was proof that the rumors had struck a nerve. Either way, the video exploded, racking up views and fueling endless debates. The problem? Once something goes viral, it takes on a life of its own. Fans weren't just reacting to the footage, they were editing it, remixing it, turning it into memes. Each version added another layer of humiliation, making it harder for King to control the narrative. And when control slips away in the public eye, the damage often lasts forever. But the deeper issue wasn't just the embarrassment, it was what the video hinted at. You could see it in King's expression, in the way his voice cracked between anger and desperation. This wasn't just about shutting down trolls. It was about a young man under immense pressure, dealing with battles most of us couldn't imagine. And the internet, instead of offering sympathy, turned it into entertainment. Meanwhile, whispers inside Atlanta kept growing louder. Reports claimed that King's outbursts weren't isolated incidents but signs of a bigger spiral. Some said he was pushing away family members, others hinted that he was caught in dangerous circles outside the spotlight. None of it was proven, but the timing made people wonder if there was more to the story than anyone was admitting. And here's where it gets even more complicated, T.I. himself couldn't stay silent. As the rumors grew, the legendary rapper stepped in with his own words, defending his son but also dropping cryptic hints that only added to the confusion. Was he confirming the rumors, shutting them down, or just trying to control a situation that was spiraling out of his hands? Fans couldn't tell, and that uncertainty only poured more fuel on the fire. Because if there's one thing worse than a rumor, it's a half-answer from someone who knows the truth. And the Harris family's silence on certain details made people wonder if the speculation might actually be closer to reality than anyone wanted to admit. When T.I. finally spoke out, it wasn't the clean break fans expected. Instead of a straightforward denial, his words were layered, almost cryptic, like a puzzle begging to be solved. He defended his son's character, yes, but he also reminded the world that family business doesn't always belong in the public eye. That one comment alone sent people spiraling into fresh debates. Was T.I. protecting King, or was he avoiding the truth? And if that wasn't enough, social media detectives went to work. They resurfaced old moments from the family's reality TV days, clips where tensions between King and his parents seemed unusually sharp. What once looked like normal teenage rebellion suddenly felt like evidence. Every eye roll, every heated exchange, every awkward silence was re-examined as if it were a clue to something deeper. The internet had turned their family scrapbook into a courtroom exhibit. But the story didn't stay confined to the past. Rumors suggested that ongoing tensions were bleeding into King's present life. Allegedly, he was distancing himself from certain family members, surrounding himself with new faces that fans didn't recognize. Some claimed these were friends who pushed him further into controversy, while others believed they were the only ones who truly had his back. Either way, King's inner circle was shifting, and with it, his behavior seemed to grow more unpredictable. The real turning point came when whispers of that mysterious paternity test resurfaced again. Bloggers claimed that someone close to the Harris family had seen proof, though no one could produce it. The absence of evidence only made the story juicier. If a test existed and it ever went public, it would upend everything: the family's reputation, King's identity, and T.I.'s legacy. But without hard proof, it sat in a dangerous gray area, a rumor powerful enough to destabilize everything without ever needing to be confirmed. And that's the tragedy of speculation. It doesn't have to be real to cause real damage. For King, the weight of those whispers seemed to push him further into defiance. He doubled down on showing the world he wasn't afraid, sometimes even daring his critics to keep talking. But deep down, the pressure was starting to show. Friends claimed he looked exhausted, that he carried himself like someone constantly on guard. Because when your name is attached to one of hip-hop's most powerful dynasties, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for an empire. And the cracks in that empire were beginning to show for everyone to see. By now, the Harris family drama wasn't just an online conversation, it was headline news. Every entertainment blog, gossip page, and hip-hop forum had their own take. Some framed King as a victim of internet cruelty, while others painted him as reckless, spoiled, and spiraling out of control. The truth, as always, was somewhere in between, but perception doesn't care about truth. Once the narrative takes hold, it spreads like wildfire. King's every move became content. If he posted a video flexing online, critics said it was desperation. If he clapped back at trolls, they said it was proof he was cracking under pressure. Even when he tried to stay silent, people filled in the blanks with their own theories. It was a no-win situation: speak up and feed the beast, or stay quiet and let the whispers get louder. And while the internet debated, real-life consequences were closing in. Allegedly, tensions between King and his family reached a boiling point behind closed doors. Reports surfaced of explosive arguments, of conversations that turned into shouting matches. To the outside world, the Harris clan was still Atlanta royalty. But insiders suggested their home life was fractured, and the rift was only growing wider by the day. Adding to the chaos were King's public run-ins. On more than one occasion, videos captured him in heated exchanges with strangers, situations that escalated far too quickly. Fans worried he was walking a dangerous line, one where a single mistake could spiral into something irreversible. And in a city like Atlanta, where street politics and celebrity culture collide, mistakes can be costly. Meanwhile, the supposed curse on the Harris name gained traction online. It wasn't just about King anymore. People began connecting dots, linking the family to old controversies, past feuds, and unresolved scandals. The narrative shifted from being about one young man's struggles to a family legacy weighed down by secrets. Whether you believed it or not, the theory was captivating, and it kept people glued to every update. For King, the pressure was unbearable. He wanted to be seen as his own man, carving his own path, but the shadow of his last name followed him everywhere. And the cruel irony was that the more he tried to escape it, the tighter it seemed to wrap around him. And then came the whispers that something had happened inside. A moment that would drag the family name back into the spotlight in the most brutal way yet. The whispers out of Atlanta's underground scene hinted at something far more serious than social media drama. Word spread that King had been caught up in a dangerous confrontation behind closed doors, one that left him shaken and fans speculating whether he was truly safe. No official report confirmed the details, but online chatter painted a grim picture. Some claimed it was a setup, others believed it was fallout from the debts and grudges tied to the Harris name. Either way, the talk was enough to send shockwaves across the internet. Clips soon followed, grainy, shaky footage that allegedly showed King after the altercation. His face looked bruised, his expression heavy with regret. To many, it was proof that the feud had crossed a line, that this wasn't just about clout or rumors anymore. The Harris dynasty had bled into something raw, dangerous, and frighteningly real. For fans who had watched King grow up on camera, it was heartbreaking. This wasn't the kid cracking jokes on reality TV anymore. This was a young man who seemed trapped between the weight of his family's empire and the relentless cruelty of a world that wanted to see him fall. The contrast was brutal. One moment, King was flashing confidence online. The next, he looked like a kid cornered by battles far bigger than himself. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Instead of sympathy, the internet doubled down. Memes mocked his bruises. Comment sections filled with people calling it karma. Some even suggested the altercation proved the rumors about the curse were true. The more vulnerable King appeared, the harsher the response became. It was as if the world had decided his pain was entertainment. Through it all, the Harris family stayed unusually quiet. T.I. posted vague messages about strength and resilience, but nothing directly addressing the footage. Tiny, King's mother, stayed even more private, fueling speculation that the family was divided on how to handle the storm. Silence, in this case, wasn't comfort, it was gasoline on a fire that refused to die. And the speculation didn't stop at King. People began to wonder how deep these issues went, how much the rest of the Harris family knew, and whether the dynasty that once looked untouchable was on the verge of crumbling. The narrative had shifted. This wasn't just King's fight anymore, it was the Harris legacy on trial. But as chaotic as things already seemed, the most shocking twist was still to come. And when it hit, it didn't just rattle fans, it shook the entire hip-hop community. The final blow came not from a leaked video or a cryptic tweet, but from the community itself. Word spread fast that the Harris family's private battles were spilling over into public spaces, with longtime allies now distancing themselves. Industry insiders whispered that deals were being delayed, collaborations cancelled, and friendships quietly dissolved. For a family that once stood as Atlanta royalty, the silence from peers spoke louder than any rumor ever could. At the heart of it all was King. He became the face of the controversy, the lightning rod for every speculation, every rumor, every criticism. The narrative painted him as both victim and villain, someone unfairly targeted but also someone whose own choices seemed to fuel the fire. And in the age of social media, where perception becomes reality, there was no way to separate the truth from the noise. But here's the chilling part. As the Harris family scrambled to hold their empire together, fans began asking whether this was just the beginning. If the paternity rumors ever gained proof, if another confrontation ever turned violent, or if more family secrets leaked, the fallout could be catastrophic. Not just for King, but for the Harris name itself. Still, through all of this chaos, one thing became clear: King Harris was more than a headline. Beneath the memes, the fights, and the whispers was a young man caught in the brutal storm of fame, legacy, and expectation. He wasn't the first child of a superstar to struggle under the weight of a famous last name, and he won't be the last. But his story serves as a raw reminder of how quickly the internet can turn a person's life into spectacle, and how merciless it can be when that person stumbles. For the Harris dynasty, the road ahead remains uncertain. Will they close ranks and silence the rumors once and for all? Or will more secrets emerge, each one threatening to topple what they've built over decades? Fans are left in suspense, waiting for the next leak, the next post, the next twist. And maybe that's the most unsettling part. This story doesn't feel finished. The questions are still hanging, the rumors still spreading, and the Harris name still carrying the weight of speculation. Whether King Harris rises above it or is consumed by it will depend on the choices he makes next, and on whether the truth, whatever it is, finally comes to light. Because in the end, family empires can crumble just as quickly as they're built. And the world is watching to see if the Harris dynasty can survive the storm.